Hello everyone, welcome back to Talking History. Thank you so much for joining me today. My name's Liz and on this channel we do exactly as it's called, I talk all about history. So we are still very early into the Norman period. I have two videos so far. I have a video on William the Conqueror and the The Doomsday Book, which I covered last week. Oh, it's going to go well, I can see it. So if you haven't watched either of those, I will link those somewhere for you to go back and watch. But today's video, I'm going to do a video on Matilda of Flanders, who was William the Conqueror's wife. And if she is someone you are interested in learning about, then stay tuned. Matilda was born in 1031 and she was born to Count Baldwin V of Flanders and Adal, who was the daughter of Robert II of France, who was also known as the Pious. And Matilda was actually a direct descendant of Alfred the Great through her father's side. Alfred's sister, Elthwith, had married Baldwin the Count of Flanders. Matilda had two brothers who each in turn would become Count of Flanders. You had Baldwin of Wand and Robert of Frisian. And we know very little about Matilda, which is quite often the case for medieval women. There isn't even a portrait that survives of Matilda. The picture we do have of her is from a description of her. And it's likely that she was raised alongside her aunt Judith, who was her father's sister, and she was of a similar age to Matilda. And Judith would actually go on to marry Tostig Godwinson, who was the Earl of Northumberland, who was Harold Godwinson's brother. The first mention of Matilda in any record appears to be about the discussion of marriage. And there is a popular story of how Matilda had refused William of Normandy's proposal due to him being illegitimate, and she had supposedly stated that she was too highly born to marry a bastard. So the story goes that when William heard of this, he was so angry that he rode to Flanders, confronted Matilda, who was on her horse at the time, pulled her from her horse, threw her to the ground, supposedly beat her up, and then Matilda, she went, "Oh yeah, I'll marry you." Okay. And they married. Although this was a story and the invention of this story wasn't mentioned until well over 100 years after. As the arrangements began for their marriage around 1048, they would have a long drawn out engagement. Pope Leo IX had banned their future nuptials on the grounds that they were too closely related. And despite the objections from the Pope, Matilda and William were married by 1053, and the couple was later given a penance for their disobedience for marrying against the Pope's orders. So each was to fund an abbey. William had founded St. Stephen's Abbey, which was in his Norman capital of Caen, and Matilda had founded Holy Trinity Abbey in the same city, and the two abbeys stand today. The marriage proved to be a strong, loving and trusting relationship. William is believed to be one of only a few medieval kings to have been completely faithful to his wife. There is no known lovers or any illegitimate children recorded, although, of course, it didn't stop the rumours. William of Malmesbury had shared one story of William having a mistress who was a daughter of a priest. And when Matilda found out, she had ordered the mistress to be hamstrung and disinherited. And Matilda's punishment by William was to be beaten to death by a horse bridle. However, this is completely untrue. Matilda died of illness in 1083. So that story is just a little bit far-fetched. But William had certainly and clearly trusted his wife. He had left Matilda to act as regent in Normandy during his long absences on campaign or when he was in England. And their relationship was a partnership, more than most of the marriages during their time. Matilda would witness 39 pre-conquest and 61 post-conquest charters. Matilda had actually supported her husband's invasion of England, and she had gifted William a great ship called the Mora, and for William's personal use. Before William had left for England in 1066, he had accompanied Matilda to the consecration of the founded abbey, Holy Trinity Abbey, and he had arranged for Matilda to act as regent in his absence. After William's success at the Battle of Hastings, William had gone back home for short visits, and he wouldn't feel secure enough until 1068 to bring his wife over to England for a coronation. Matilda, who was 6 months pregnant with their youngest son Henry, who would be born in Selby in September, and Matilda was crowned Queen of England in Westminster Abbey by Archbishop Aldred of Canterbury in 1068. Matilda and William would go on to have a large family. They had 4 boys and at least 4 girls. Their eldest son was Robert Curthose, who Matilda was very close to. And then there was Richard, who was sadly killed during a hunting accident in his youth. Then there was William, who would become known as William Rufus, and King William II. And then there was their youngest son, Henry, who would become King Henry I. The daughters were Adlisa, I want to say, who had become a nun following a series of failed marriage plans, and Celia was given to the convent from a very young age, and Constance had married Alan Fergent, Duke of Brittany, and Adela had married Stephen of Blois. I'm not quite sure how to pronounce that. And she'd be the mother of King Stephen of England. There was suggestions of a further 2 daughters, who was Matilda and Agatha. However, the evidence of their existence is actually quite limited. It's possible that she had a further 2 daughters, but they died during infancy. I honestly don't. I couldn't find an awful lot. So as I mentioned, Matilda was very close to her eldest son, Robert. However, Robert was quite often at loggerheads with his father, and Robert had often rebelled against William as a young man, and Matilda was constantly playing peacemaker between the two. And during a period of Robert being exiled, Matilda had supported her son, and she would send him silver and gold, and Robert would use these funds to rebel against his father again. Although the problems with their eldest son had caused considerable tensions within their marriage, Matilda and William's marriage is one of the most successful marriages in the medieval period. Their partnership as rulers, as husband and wife, was strong, and it was built on mutual respect. One contemporary had remarked that the Queen adored the King and the King the Queen. Matilda was renowned for her piety, although the founding of the abbey was a penance for her marriage to William. It was her constance and repeated donations to religious houses that had demonstrated her dedication to her faith. Matilda had fell ill in the summer of 1083, and the continuing worry over her husband and son bickering couldn't have helped her health, and by winter 1083 Matilda was gravely ill. Matilda died on the 2nd of November in 1083, aged around 52, and her beloved husband William was by her side throughout her illness, and he remained with her right up to the very end. Matilda was buried at Holy Trinity Abbey following a 2-day funeral which was attended by monks, abbots, bishops and nuns. Matilda had a whole host of people to pay homage to her. There is no record of which of her children had attended the funeral, although it's quite possible her daughter Celia was in attendance, as she was a nun at the abbey, and Matilda's grave unfortunately was destroyed in the 16th century during the French Wars of Religion, and her casket was opened in 1961, and the skeleton was incomplete, and most of Matilda's remains have never been recovered. William the Conqueror would follow his wife to the grave only 4 years later in 1087. Matilda is often seen as the ideal medieval wife and mother, ever supportive to her husband, and he had relied on her so heavily to administer Normandy in his many absences. And even when Matilda disobeyed her husband in support of her eldest son, Robert, she was still the embodiment of a good medieval woman playing peacemaker between her husband and son. And she supported her husband, and her piety provided an example for future queens and noble ladies to follow for many, many years. And there we are, there's Matilda of Flanders. I actually really quite like her, I think. Let me know what your comments are, what you think of Matilda. And like I said, I know I said in William's video I wasn't really a big fan of William. I think I didn't like how he went about things. He got things with violence, but then that was the era, that was the time it was. But their relationship, I think he really truly loved Matilda and she him. And yeah, there we are. So I hope you enjoyed the video. Please give it a thumbs up, and please do subscribe so you don't miss any future videos, as I will be constantly uploading videos on history. There's so many more subjects I want to do, I can't wait. And so please do subscribe so you don't miss any, and look after yourselves, and I will see you all soon. Take care.